Picture this.
I'm not gonna be with my parents, there's no adults, and I think I'm gonna die out here because there's nothing.
You're 8 years old. You just learned long division. And now you're running a frontier town.
Taylor and the town is really mad at us.
There's no electricity, no parents, and no real adult supervision. At least not the kind that stops you from accidentally drinking bleach. Welcome to Kid Nation, the only reality show where CBS looked at Lord of the Flies and thought, let's make it family entertainment. In 2007, at the peak of reality TV's "we'll figure out the ethics later" era, 40 kids were dropped into a fake Wild West town in the New Mexico desert and told to build a functioning society from scratch. Not a game, a society. They had to cook, clean, run businesses, pass laws, and somehow keep it together without their parents, or a basic understanding of taxes. And CBS sold this as inspiring.
Can we start burying, guys? We buried it all.
A bold social experiment about leadership, teamwork, and the resilience of the next generation, which is a very elegant way of saying we gave children capitalism and a heat stroke risk, and then filmed the results. On paper, it sounded revolutionary. Kids proving they could do what adults do, but better. In reality, it was 40 miners working long days in the desert, dealing with power struggles, breakdowns, and responsibilities most adults outsource immediately.
We voted for him for nothing because that's what he's up there doing.
And somehow people watched this and thought, wow, this is wholesome. Because nothing says wholesome television like a child-run economy where one kid becomes a dictator before the end of week 1. This wasn't just a reality show, it was a social experiment with better editing and significantly worse judgment.
The tank is completely empty out of water.
It's really hard to fill that up.
And somehow, for a brief moment, it almost worked. To understand how Kid Nation even made it to air, you have to go back to the mid-2000s, a time when reality TV had completely run out of shame. This was the era of Survivor and Big Brother, where the formula was simple: remove comfort, add pressure, and watch people fall apart on camera. So naturally, someone in a boardroom asked the obvious next question: what if we did this with children? Enter producer Tom Foreman and CBS, who pitched Kid Nation as a bold social experiment. 40 kids, aged roughly 8 to 15, were dropped into an abandoned Wild West town called Bonanza City, where they had to build a society from scratch. No phones, no parents, no modern luxuries, just chores, governance, and a loosely defined idea of figure it out.
You have to haul water back and forth until you fill up that tank by yourself.
The show leaned into this frontier fantasy, presenting the kids as modern-day pioneers rediscovering responsibility and community. It was marketed as inspiring and educational, like a PBS special if PBS occasionally ignored labor laws.
Just like Gregor Blank and haul water back and forth whenever I want, but I'm not.
And to be fair, the hype worked. Before the show even aired, it was already everywhere. Early promo footage sparked outrage, boycott calls, and endless media debate about whether this was innovative television or just child labor with better lighting, which, ironically, only made people more curious. By the time Kid Nation premiered in September 2007, it pulled in around 9 million viewers. Strong numbers for something this strange. CBS saw it as a win. Critics saw it as a warning sign. But for a brief moment, none of that mattered, because the show had achieved the one thing reality TV cares about more than ethics, logic, or common sense.
We had a bunk together. I helped you feel better when you were homesick. Remember that?
Attention. And in television, attention is everything, right up until it turns into scrutiny. At first, Kid Nation really tried to convince you this was working. Kids were organizing chores, holding town meetings, and giving little speeches about responsibility like they were tiny politicians running for re-election in a town that didn't even have plumbing. And for a brief moment, it almost looked impressive. You saw kids stepping up, taking charge, proving that maybe the next generation could actually do things better than adults. And then very quickly, it stopped looking inspiring and started looking like exactly what it was.
Now, Zach! Taylor, let me out!
A group of children trying to run a collapsing society with the combined life experience of a failed group project. Because the moment you remove real authority and replace it with figure it out, you don't get a utopia, you get chaos. Messy, emotional, sleep-deprived chaos. And this didn't unfold slowly. This all started during filming itself back in April and May of 2007.
I'm going home, that's the point. Okay, fine, then go home.
when 40 kids were already working long days in the New Mexico desert, cooking over open flames, hauling supplies, and trying to maintain order in a town that barely functioned on a good day. A town where kids were divided into classes, upper class merchants, cooks, and laborers, and rewarded with cash prizes like the infamous $20,000 gold star, because nothing says healthy childhood development like introducing class inequality before puberty.
Everybody does it, then it won't be hard. This needs to be a town thing.
Then the incident started. Not cute character building moments, actual incidents. At one point, a child accidentally drank bleach after mistaking it for something else, while another got burned by hot cooking grease. CBS described these as isolated incidents, which is corporate language for, "We're honestly surprised it wasn't worse," because nothing says safe environment like a sentence that includes both children and industrial cleaning product. And while this was happening during production, the backlash didn't wait for the show to air. By the time Kid Nation premiered in September 2007, the controversy was already building.
And making this thing work. But now we have to focus on keeping it up.
Authorities in New Mexico had started asking a very reasonable question. Are these kids legally allowed to be doing this? It turned out the production hadn't exactly gone out of its way to secure proper child labor permits, which is a bold strategy when your entire show is children working.
I mean, like, as a town council member, I can just focus on my job.
CBS's defense was that they weren't workers, they were at camp. Yes, camp. Because when I think of summer camp, I also think of economic systems, governance, and the constant risk of accidental poisoning. The show loved to present this idea of no adults, but in reality, there were hundreds of crew members just off camera.
Really. I'm not the best speechmaker here, so DK, it's all yours.
Stepping in when things went too far, which somehow made the whole experiment feel even stranger. Unions looked at this and basically said, yeah, this feels like a sweatshop, just with shorter people. Then people started reading the contracts, and that's when everything went from questionable to deeply uncomfortable. Parents had signed agreements that included a $5 million penalty if they spoke publicly about the show. $5 million. That's not a confidentiality clause. That's a supervillain threat. The contracts also waived liability for pretty much everything, including serious injury and even death, which is one of those things that is technically legal to write down, but absolutely insane to need in the first place. Meanwhile, as the show aired through late 2007, it leaned harder into the drama, because reality TV doesn't just capture chaos, it edits it into something louder. Kids were quickly turned into characters: the leader, the lazy one, the troublemaker, the villain. And once you label a 12-year-old a villain on national television, congratulations, you've just created the world's youngest PR crisis. Former participants later said they were reduced to stereotypes, with entire personalities shaped around whatever made the episode more dramatic. The audience, of course, loved it. Early internet forums lit up with debates, arguments, and full-grown adults passionately analyzing the moral decisions of children. Because nothing brings people together quite like collectively judging a 10-year-old's leadership skills. But for some of those kids, that attention didn't stay harmless. One contestant, portrayed as the villain, ended up receiving thousands of hate messages after the show aired. Thousands.
Real live pork.
Directed at a child for not running a desert town correctly. At the same time, the ratings told their own story. When the show premiered in September 2007, it pulled in around 9 million viewers. But as the season continued through the fall, the numbers settled into something far less impressive. Not a disaster, but not strong enough to distract from the growing pile of bad press. Advertisers got nervous, critics got louder, and the narrative flipped completely. This wasn't innovative anymore. It was uncomfortable. It wasn't inspiring. It was exploitative. By the time the finale aired in December 2007, nobody really cared who won the gold star. The real question had become, why did this exist in the first place? CBS briefly entertained the idea of a second season, even beginning early casting, which is incredible because nothing says confidence like looking at a controversy storm and thinking, let's run it back. But the damage was already done. The headlines didn't go away, the criticism didn't fade, and by May 2008, CBS quietly chose not to renew Kid Nation. No dramatic cancellation, no big announcement, it just disappeared, like a network trying to delete its own search history.
Before the clock runs out, becomes Bonanza City's new upper class.
And just like that, the experiment ended the way it probably should have started, with someone finally saying maybe this was a bad idea. Looking back at Kid Nation, it's easy to treat it like a weird relic from the 2000s, just another bizarre reality show that went a little too far and quietly disappeared. But the uncomfortable truth is that Kid Nation didn't fail because it was a bad idea. It failed because it was a logical idea. It was the natural endpoint of reality TV's obsession with authenticity, pressure, and spectacle. Once audiences had watched adults betray each other for money on Survivor,
Time. We're walking around with 30 pigs in those beans. Eddie is sick!
scream at each other on Big Brother, and emotionally unravel for primetime entertainment, the next step wasn't innovation, it was escalation. And in 2007, Kid Nation was that escalation. The problem is that the entire concept was built on a contradiction that never made sense. The show marketed itself as a wholesome social experiment, kids learning responsibility, building community, becoming better versions of themselves. But everything about the format rewarded the exact opposite. Conflict got screen time, drama got attention, and breakdowns got remembered, while cooperation and stability were mostly invisible. From the very beginning, the show wasn't actually designed to prove kids could succeed. It was designed to prove that chaos is entertaining. And once you realize that, the whole thing falls apart. The experiment wasn't neutral. It wasn't observing what would naturally happen.
We are going through people faster than anybody else.
It was engineered to push kids into stressful, unstable situations, the kind that during filming in 2007 led to real consequences, including injuries and even a child accidentally ingesting bleach on set. That's not a social experiment, that's reality TV, just with smaller participants. And that's where it stops feeling like entertainment and starts feeling like exploitation. Adults sign up for reality shows knowing the deal. They understand they might be edited, misrepresented, or turned into a meme. They can opt out, push back, or at least contextualize what's happening. Kids can't. They don't fully understand contracts, they don't understand editing, and they definitely don't understand what it means to have millions of people judging them online. So when Kid Nation turned children into characters, the leader, the lazy one, the villain, it wasn't just storytelling, it was branding.
Guyland and the Red District are the new upper class.
Permanent public branding applied to people who hadn't even finished middle school yet, on a show where parents had signed contracts with multi-million-dollar confidentiality clauses, while producers controlled how those kids would be seen by the world. And the consequences didn't end when the show did. Some participants carried those portrayals for years, as online reactions, hate messages, and public perception didn't disappear once the cameras stopped rolling, because the internet doesn't forget. It archives. Then there's the bigger issue, the one that makes Kid Nation feel even worse in hindsight. It exposed a loophole. By framing the show as a camp instead of a formal TV production, it avoided many of the protections that would normally apply to child actors, including stricter labor regulations and educational requirements, which means the entire premise wasn't just ethically questionable. It was structurally broken. It relied on the absence of rules. And that's exactly why it wouldn't work today, or at least not without massive backlash. Audiences are different now. There's more awareness around child labor, exploitation, and what happens when you expose young people to public judgment.
Picture to my own self.
Thanks, DK. If there's one thing I'm good at, it's taking a lot of crap.
Before they're old enough to understand it. We've seen what happens to child stars, and we've seen what happens to reality TV contestants. Combining the two doesn't create something inspiring, it creates a case study. And that's what Kid Nation has become. Not a forgotten show, not a hidden gem, but a warning. A reminder of what happens when entertainment pushes past its own limits and forgets that the people on screen are still people, especially when those people are kids. In a strange way, Kid Nation feels like something that should have worked. The idea wasn't completely absurd. Watching kids organize themselves, solve problems, and take on responsibility without adults is genuinely interesting. And for brief moments, the show actually delivered on that.
But we got it done.
You saw cooperation, empathy, even leadership that felt more real than anything happening on most adult reality shows at the time. But those moments were never the point, because Kid Nation wasn't built to observe kids succeeding. It was built to turn that success into entertainment, to heighten it, manipulate it, and, when necessary, break it apart to make it more watchable. And that's why it didn't last. Not because the concept didn't work, but because the system behind it was never designed to succeed. It was designed to create chaos that people would watch. And for a few weeks in 2007, they did. What's left now isn't a forgotten show or a hidden gem. It's a case study, a reminder of what happens when entertainment stops asking, should we do this? And only cares about whether people will watch, because eventually someone always says yes, and eventually everyone else starts asking why. So if you enjoyed this deep dive into one of the strangest experiments reality TV ever attempted, make sure to like, subscribe, and tell me which show should be next, because there are a lot of them, and somehow they keep getting worse.